When you're covering a story, your news editor is going to expect that you are shooting for layout, meaning that you're providing coverage that goes through and establishes some kind of context for the story and then starts moving in to get into the details, actually to give the story some kind of arc. Now, you've heard about a story arc in terms of how you write a story, but you can also create a story arc in terms of how you photograph a story as well. So I'm going to use some shots taken by some photojournalists of the Berkeley protest that happened about a year ago, actually, to go through and illustrate what it is that I'm talking about in terms of different types of field of view, okay? Going from an establishing shot to a medium close-up or an extreme close-up, and then get into shots that go through and establish relationships, and then get into what we call a clincher shot. So we'll start off with the establish here. This was done by photojournalist Dan Lurie. I believe he's with the Tribune in Oakland, California, shooting. This is a standoff you see happening here, and what this established shot does, okay, it's wide, it's open, it's got a large field of view where we see the protesters, and then we see a clear space there in between them and the police line that's going on. There's a fascinating vector in this in terms of the one-way sign, okay, indicating that there's some momentum going camera left to camera right going into this. Well, it doesn't look very immovable because there's not many police officers there like they could just punch right through them. And that's the story. That's what's going on here with that as it establishes the context of this conflict that's going on. Another one by the same photographer in the same area also gets through and establishes context. This one is he's changed the angle of his camera. Photographers often get caught up in what I call the 5'7" syndrome. 5'7" about the average height where the camera's taking a photograph from. Here, Dan's holding the camera up over his head. He's getting a high shot to go through and just give a different point of view in terms of what's going on. That's what you need to do as well in terms of your layout, is to put your camera on different planes other than what we normally see. Give us a different angle. Go down low. Go right down to the ground. Some of my best work I did as a news photojournalist was just from the ground angle, just to give a different perspective in terms of what might be unfolding, what was going on. The second type of shot is what's called the medium shot. And here is where we start filling the frame then with the action. Maybe partial body like we see with this fellow here, or maybe full body to see what's going on. Here we have the way it's framed up with the subject on the camera right there, and then the kill Trump in the red on the background on the brick wall. Even though it's truncated out or it's cropped out of the image, we can still go through the law of closure and see what's happening within this. This is a fascinating photograph in that at a lot of these protests that are going on that start off peacefully, there are a lot of men who show up. This started in Ferguson, by the way. We saw this happening there with the same kind of disguise, kind of a ninja protester, if you will. Dressed in black, their faces are covered, and then a black hoodie. And we're discovering that through studying a lot of the images that are taken, that these are the guys that are going through and rallying everybody up to violence. There. It's not the protesters themselves, but this nondescript group of men who are getting involved and riling things up. It's fascinating here in the story. So this is kind of a medium shot they have going on. Nathan Phillips has a medium shot here with a really nice pattern of all the hands going up. And then you see the different complexions of the hands, the different colors that are going on. There's a really nice pattern that's happening within that. It's compressed. This is a telephoto lens. It's giving us that kind of compression that we see happening there. But it's open enough still to kind of go through and just start introducing us now to a little bit more detail. The close-up is next, and close-up gets us maybe sometimes uncomfortably close, like Noah Berger does with this shot of this injured protester there. The bars in the foreground give us a really different type of context in terms of what was actually going on. The shattered window behind this poor guy. The closer we get, the more intense the story becomes here. Laura Oda, got this. It's paint, I believe, here that's being strewn across the window. Honestly, all the close-up shots that I got were more gory than the last one that I showed you, so I decided to spare you on that. So those are the three types of shots that I'm looking for, four types of shots, basically, in the first, or in the initial layout. Okay, your established, your medium shot, your close-up, or a medium close-up, or an extreme close-up there as we go. Your assignment for this asks you to do at least 4 of those as it goes. But there are 2 more shots, though, that I want to introduce you to, not necessarily in terms of its field of view, but in terms of what it's capturing. So several years ago, we had, believe it or not, on Dixie's campus, a little bit of a student protest. And this was going on when Dixie State was considering dropping Rebel, the Rebel icon, from its identity. And we could talk about that all day long, too. The idea that Dixie Rebels was part of the university's culture just wasn't playing well in terms of being a little more sensitive to our entire student body coming in. And so there was, supposedly, there was a call out to folks within the campus community and within the St. George community to come up with perhaps some alternative ideas. When it was announced that that input would not even be considered, that they were just going to go ahead and get a PR firm in to go through and consider what that next icon might be, this protest came about. And as you can imagine, it was a peaceful protest as it goes. I shot this with a wide-angle lens, I think it was a 10 millimeter lens on my Canon, and left it that way. But what it captured is the interaction that's going on here. And I used different angles. I shot low, I shot high. And I shot on some angles that weren't all that flattering for a purpose, for a reason, to go through and just kind of, now I'm editorializing here, clearly, okay, using a wide angle lens to go through and do that. And caught some peripheral action in terms of our campus security, and they're watching what's going on. And all this led up to a moment here within the story, a decisive moment. And I was lucky to be standing in the corner of the room with a wide enough angle on my camera to go through and capture this image. And this is one of about 7 images that were shot consecutively as the events of this meeting were unfolding. What you're seeing here is a former president of the university on the left who is leaving the table. And the guy in the red there, Mr. Shakespeare, is at the time was the leader of Dixie's Alumni Association. And then the guy in the blue is Brock Bybee, who was the student government president at the time, and who was leading the resistance, really, that rebels stayed. And they were set up within this meeting. And we see that happening as the president is leaving the table, that we were able to go through and capture that decisive moment. So 2 other types of shots beyond the field of view shots. I'm looking for something that gets into something that's relational, something that's interactive with your story, and then what is that decisive moment? Can you capture that? That's what I'll be looking for in your assignment this week, all right? You know where to find me. Thanks for watching.